Hello, welcome back to Average Gamer Plays Factorio. This is going to be a little bit of a little sidetrack, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a new sandbox world here, where I'm going to experiment and work out blueprints and designs for to expand the factory. Because what I need to do in the main factory is we're very nearly at the stage of launching the rocket, and I'm starting to think about expanding the factory into something much bigger, and for that we're going to need to make a lot of beaconed moduled builds. To start off with, I need to do builds to create lots of level 3 speed and productivity modules, and in order to do that I need an awful lot of green and red circuits. So what I need to do is work out an updated or an upgraded factory to make green circuits and one to make red circuits. Now I've already done one to make green circuits. I'm going to work on the red circuits one, but what I'll do first is I'll show you how I set up a brand new sandbox world to play in, because there's quite a few sort of settings that need to be tweaked and changed. So we'll start out brand new game, sandbox, turn all the ores off. Don't need any of those. We don't need water or trees or cliffs. We don't want enemies. We don't need pollution. Doesn't matter about the research queue availability, because that will happen once we get into the game. Let's play. Press tab to get rid of that message. We'll say yes, we'll have all the technology researched. We won't need to have any starting items. We will enable cheat mode. And we will like it to have always day, please. The next thing we do is we press the backtick key, which is on my keyboard is at the top left next to the 1. And then we type /editor. And that opens up a map editor. And if you're making a custom world, this is where you can place down, you know, items on the world and just design the world to look the way you want it to look. So what we're going to do is go into surfaces, remove all entities. That's going to get rid of all these like bushes and trees and everything. There they go. We're going to fill it with lab tiles. You can see the world looks completely different already, and we're going to say generate new chunks with lab tiles. And we're going to press E for inventory. There's a question mark thing on here on the right. And in here, there's special items that you don't normally get in the game. So you've got electric energy interface. We'll just right click and we'll give ourselves 5 of those. Infinity chest. And infinity pipe. And you will see very shortly what they do. I'm also, for the purposes of the factory that I'm going to build, I'm going to give myself some transport belts, underground belts, splitters, inserters, and I need assembly machines. Assembly machine 3s. I need lots of speed modules, plod modules, beacons. Anything else that I need I can just sort of add to it as and when. So we'll put some of these items on the hotbar. Now I'll move this out of the way so I can go into my factory planner mod, which is completely blank because it's a brand new world. Now I'll go into preferences. Now these are the preferences that I'm going to have for this particular set of factories that I'm going to be building. So yours will be different depending on sort of where you're up to in the game. So I like to have round button numbers, which means it's going to round everything up to the nearest machine. So if it works out that we're going to need... No, I'm going to leave that one off, because the reason I turn that on is that if I design a factory that I want to produce like 1,500 items a minute, and it says I need 2.3 machines, it'll round it up to 3, because you can't build 2.3 machines. But I might decide, if it says that we're going to need 2.1 machines, I might just decide to round it down to 2. So I don't know at the moment whether this always rounds up or just rounds to the nearest, but I'm going to leave that turned off and then I'll make my own decision afterwards. In the machines, I'm going to have productivity modules by default. If it won't take productivity modules, because not every recipe does, I'll put speed modules in there. And the beacon, I'll put speed modules, and I'm going to say we'll work out how many it needs if we're going to have 12 beacons around each factory, each assembler. And I'll show you what the difference in design is. There's a couple of different schools of thought about the way to lay beacons around an assembler. So we'll have electric mining drills as being the default, and then all this will determine sort of how many of each machine that we'll need in the factory to produce the required output. Okay, so those are my preferences. Let's see what it says if we create a new sub-factory for advanced circuits, which is that one. We'll add that as a product. And we'll say we want, let's say we want a blue belt's worth of, this is going to be an awful lot, but we'll say we want 1 blue belt of red circuits coming out. 2,700 a minute, because a blue belt, yellow belt is 15 items a second total, a red belt is 30 items a second total, and a blue belt is 45 items a second total. So 45 times 60 is it? Let me just get my calculator out. Actually, there is calculator here. 45 times 60 equals 2,700. Okay. No. So we will left click to add the recipe. So that tells us for 2,700 advanced circuits per minute, we need 3,800 normal electronic circuits, and it's automatically put in the preferences. It says we're going to be using assembly machine 3s with 4 modules in each and surrounded by 12 beacons, and we still need 24.1 machines, 24.11. We add that into the electronic circuits. It says we need, now the reason why we need so many of those and so few of those is that this is a much faster recipe than the advanced circuit, and these machines can just produce them a lot faster. And then we're going to need 6 machines making copper cable that feeds into the both of these. So we'll come back to those numbers later. We'll just close that for now. The main, right, so there's 2 schools of thought on how to set up a beacon factory. Now the other thing that happens is in editor mode is that when you place items, they get immediately placed. So I'm going to shift click and put 2 modules into that beacon. I'm then going to copy, Control C, paste, paste, Control C, rotate, paste, rotate, paste, rotate, paste. I'm going to put an assembly machine in the middle. Now that assembly machine is covered, so this beacon transmits its effect on this highlighted area, and each one of these beacons hits that assembly machine. Okay. If I take the assembly machine and I put, let's set the recipe as red circuits, and I put 4 productivity modules into it. When I hover over the machine, let's press Alt to turn that on. Okay, if we take, just close that up a little bit to get that out of the way. We now have a machine on the right hand side. It says number of effect sources 16. So that's 4 from here, these 4 modules, plus 1 of each speed module. So that's 3, 6, 9, 12, and those 4 is 16. Because the beacons only transmit 50% of their value to each assembler, each item that it hits. So that's like the downside of the beacons, but the plus side is that they really speed everything up. So this is going to have crafting speed of 8, which is 540% faster than normal, which is what we want. We want to have as few machines as possible making as many items as possible. So what I'm going to do with this sandbox build is try and work out different layouts of machines. Now that's one way of laying out the beacons. Then I'm going to test. Once I've worked out the layout, I'm going to test how well they actually work and how much power they use, and then I'll work out which is like the most efficient. And I don't think there's an awful lot in it really, because a lot of people build like this, and you can, you know, if you copy and paste them, then you know that beacon is now affecting those 2 assemblers that it's hitting. That beacon is affecting those 2 assemblers. That beacon is affecting all 4. So there is a bit of economy of scale and reuse of beacons in that they can have an effect on more than one assembler machine, but it does mean that the factory design and layout is very uniform, and some people don't like that. So we'll just delete all those temporarily. I'll probably add some more in later on, but the other way of laying out the factory would be to have, let's just put those. Now I've given myself enough room here for an inserter in and an inserter out and then a belt. Okay, just pick up some more of those. So this is like the common sort of layout if you're going to have the beacons in a row. And so that machine, that beacon, again, just about hits this assembler. You can see where the highlighted area is. This one hits it, that one, that one. That one doesn't, it's too far away. So if I've just got one machine, I can just take those 2 beacons off. So now we've got 8 beacons hitting that one machine. And again, we'll set the recipe, we'll add the productivity modules into it. So now that machine is now affected by 12 effect sources. So it's again the 4 productivity modules and then 1 from each of these beacons. So that's 4, 8, and those 4 there is 12. So it's not going to produce as many machines as fast, as many circuits as fast, but it's slightly more economical because we're only using 8 beacons here instead of 12. So that'll save on a little bit of power as well. So it's a trade-off between the power usage and the number of assemblers you need. Because in this kind of layout with the grid, you don't need as many assembly machines because they're surrounded by more beacons. So each one will produce more items. In this one, you'll need fewer beacons but more assemblers. Now the thing is, the assembler uses, see that one at the bottom of that info box there, it says max consumption of electricity 4.73 megawatts. And this one is 3.68 megawatts, but we'll need more of these machines to produce the same amount of stuff. So if I've installed another mod called max rate calculator, and I've got to you swipe it over a factory, and it pops up another little box down here, and it says this particular factory with 1 assembler surrounded by 12 beacons will make 112 items. This one will make 77 items because there's fewer beacons hitting this assembler. If I copy this and paste another one down there, now this one is only affected by 10 beacons, so I need to Have another beacon on the end of each one. So that one is also now affected by 12 effect sources, as is this one. So they should be just as fast as each other, but if I look at the max rate calculator, that now produces 150, obviously twice 77. So how many, right, if I wanted a blue belt, in fact, let's change this to be a red belt. (16) 12 beaconed items, and that reckons it's going to use 75.9 megawatts, but I don't think that's an accurate number because it doesn't know how many of these beacons are going to overlap with each other. So that reckons 16 machines. So that's going to be max rate calculator on that. That will produce 1,792 items. And then a red belt should be 45, no, 30 times 60, isn't it? Is 1,800, so it's just slightly under. And this is the thing about it reckons it needs 16.07 machines. Yes, we've only put down 16, that's right. So that will produce almost, give or take, 8 items. A red belt. Now, we're using, if we just Control C over that, we're using 105 beacons and 16 assembly machines. Let's add substations. Put them down there. So let's put a substation in each of these. And we will put some belts into this and feed some machines in. See, feed some items in. So we need, for this, plastic bar, copper cable. Right, plastic bar and electronic circuit can share the same line coming in. So we'll have you can have the, we're going to have a red belt, weren't we? So let's just stick some red belts on there. So what I'll do is I'll do like a single machine and then I'll copy and paste it, and we'll tidy it up afterwards. So the idea is that we're going to have a red belt coming up and it goes underneath and back out, and an inserter outputting the items, and then we're going to have inserters on each side with the blue belts going that way. That's going to be something like that, and then this one is going to have to be something like that. That'll work, won't it? So at the bottom we need, that goes in, that goes in, that goes in, to go in there. Right, we're going to have, let's just sort of come down a little bit further on this. Another one of our magic items. And then we'll have belts leading into there, into there, to there, there. So this is going to have plastic bar, wasn't it? Plastic bar. Was it the bottom one I did or the top one? Top one. Right, shift click, paste, copy paste that. That is going to have electronic circuits. Copy paste. This one is going to have iron plate. Copy paste, 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 paste. We'll just put another substation down there to power all that lot. And then at the top we'll have, again, similar sort of thing, except these belts, these inserters are going to be taken off the belts. And these are going to be set to remove unfiltered items. So these will just act as like a sink. And again, we'll have a bit of power up there. So we'll copy this. And if I've done it properly, no. It doesn't line up, does it? That's a little bit annoying. We will take those off and just, doesn't matter if this doesn't look too neat because this is just a temporary thing just to feed these items in. Paste, 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 and then at the top we will copy, paste, paste, paste. Yeah, that covers it. That's those there. So now, if I come out of my editor, look at all these items going into there. Have I done the recipe wrong? I have. It shouldn't have been iron plate. It should have been copper cable. Right. Turn that off. Not the end of the world. We will just have some of those coming out there. There and there. And we will, yeah, we'll change those to be copper cable. So those are now producing copper cable. These are now producing red circuits. That's it. All those things at the top are going to get rid of. So we don't need these anymore. So that is now producing some red circuits, which are all actually just getting gobbled up by these machines. So let's just have a look. What happens if we do now when we look at our max rate calculator, it says 1792, which is what we wanted. Have a look at the electricity. No, not the production. If we click on a power pole, now that is now using 129, 130, which is what I calculated it to be, didn't I? I did. Well, I came up with 126.08, but we're having 3 megawatts being used by the stack inserters, which I didn't take into account. So 75.8, which is what I had, pretty much. 75.68 I had. And then 50.4, which is bang on. Okay. Now then, so each of these machines, it does say 4.73. Maybe I didn't, maybe I used a slightly different number in there, but still. So that's how this works. So we can sort of set something up. These infinity chests just output as many of these items as we need. So the factories are always, you know, fully, assuming these belts are full when the factory comes in, then this is what the factory will produce coming out. And this is, in fact, these can go, wait for this to sort of catch up. And it will catch up and empty out a little bit because this is producing just slightly less, very slightly less than a full red belt of items. But we can see that with that kind of setup, that produces kind of a full red belt of items. Now, if I were to do it on this kind of a setup, would it need less machines? Would it be cheaper in terms of electricity? I'm not worried too much about the space that it takes up because you've got plenty of space in Factorio. I'm just more concerned about how expensive it would be to build, because this build uses, again, if I go Control C over that, that uses, it doesn't say. What it will say is if I try to make a blueprint of it, it says down here 210 speed module 3s and 64 productivity modules, which is quite expensive. So if I can make another factory that produces the same amount of red belts but uses fewer beacons and therefore fewer modules, I can get it built quicker. So it's all a little bit of sort of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other thing at the moment, and I've never actually done these sort of tests before and sort of worked out the pros and cons of each style of building. And I don't mind this sort of style with it being sort of uniform and whatever. I have done a few builds like this. I've never done massive sort of red-green circuit arrays and whatever, but I've used it for things like rocket fuel and for the labs. I think I did something similar. I might have had yes, I did something similar for the labs, because these are all like input lines, and I just had sort of two sciences on one belt and 2 sciences on the next belt and 2 more sciences on this belt. Now, the other thing that you need to bear in mind or think about when you're doing a build like this is that you can keep an eye. These you know, I've got this Bottleneck mod which shows me that all these factories are actually working nicely. You know, they've got as much items as they need, and they've got as much space as they need on the output belts, and nothing's getting backed up. But you can tell on this kind of build if the factories were, if these greens were going red, and it was saying on the right hand side it says status working, but if it said, you know, waiting for input materials or item productivity overload or something, which means it's waiting for space on the output belts, then you can just add more inserters as necessary. I mean, these inserters here, let's change, let's go back into the editor and let's change, let's put some blue inserters on the hotbar, and let's just change these 4 green inserters to blue ones and just see if that makes a difference, because it might not, because the speed that this produces, the blue inserter might be perfectly adequate to to unload it. And this one will use, it says max consumption 46.7 kilowatts, and these use 133 kilowatts, so it does save a bit of power. So let's just replace all those with blue ones. Just watch it for a minute and make sure that it does actually still carry on working. But if we have a look at the power usage, it's still hovering at about 129. I mean, that is, it has gone down a little bit. That's 250 kilowatts. So it's now like 2.25 megawatts for all the inserters, and I'm sure it was maybe nearer 4 previously. So we've saved a little bit. But over a large enough factory, those sort of things will add up. You're still going to need a new nuclear plant every so often, though. So even just this one factory, with those modules in it, is using more electricity than we provided on our steam boilers when we first set them all up. We had those 2 rows of steam boilers, and that only produced about 75-80 megawatts. And this is using about 130. So it just goes to show how much power a large factory does actually need. But this is now, if we have a look at the P for the production statistics, and look at this over a minute, it is actually producing, you know, that says 1.7, that says 1.8, but it's just, it is rounded. It is producing exactly what it said it does on the max rate calculator. So nothing's getting bottlenecked, nothing's getting backed up on that. We do then need to work out how many assemblers we need to produce 5,100 copper cables and 2,500, you know, electronic circuits per minute. So, you know, these factories don't stand in isolation. They're part of a much bigger thing. So what I need, the whole point of all this is to work out to make the modules. Modules need, level 1 needs red and green. Level 2 needs red and blue, and level 3 needs red and blue. And blue needs red and green. And red needs green. So basically you need an awful lot of electronic circuits. You need thousands and thousands of electronic circuits just to be making these modules. There you go, these modules in quantity. So basically we're going to need a massive green circuit factory just feeding, well, partly feeding the red circuits and then partly feeding the blue circuits, and also feeding into the module side of things as well. Now what I've done in the past is I've used somebody else's blueprint. They had a little factory design set up, and it was all set up as a remote thing. You can go to a remote area of your map, and as long as you've got coal, copper ore and iron ore near each other, and then either coal or oil, because you need to make the plastic, you can either do oil refining to make the plastic, or you can do coal liquefaction to turn coal into oil and then make the plastic off that. So as long as you've got those resources, copper, iron, and then either coal or oil in a place near each other, you can build this sort of remote factory that will just mine those ores and use it purely for building Prod 3 and Speed 3 modules and nothing else. And then you train them all back in again to your main base. And I'm going to do a very similar thing, but I'm going to try and design the factory myself instead of using somebody else's blueprint. So that's the next plan of action. I've been going for sort of long enough on this one for now, I think, so I will leave it there. I will do some more experimentation. I just wanted to show you what the process was and how to set up this sandpit world and how to use it, and you know, what the editor mode looks like, and you know, how to get the infinite items, just to experiment and play around with your factory designs. And you've got you know, an infinite amount of resources, an infinite amount of space to play with. And then once you've got this all set up and working, you can blueprint it and import it into your main blueprint library, and then just sort of put it down in your main world, and then use your normal actual proper mining techniques and manufacturing techniques to actually make all this stuff. But you just do the design in a side world where you've got plenty of time to think and place and space to play around. Now another little trick that we use when blueprinting, let's go back into editor mode. Let me just make a complete copy of this to make the blueprint off. Let's take those items off. So what we normally do for blueprinting is you can change these lines, and what you do is you put a constant combinator in there, and we'll say that one outputs plastic, it outputs green circuits, and this one outputs copper cable. And these aren't used as part of the actual factory, but they're used as a visual indication to somebody putting down the blueprint, which could be you, could be somebody else, what the actual inputs are. And we can go up to the top here, and we can, in fact, we'll keep those there. We'll take these off here, and we'll just put a belt there and a belt there. And we'll take constant combinator and label that as red circuits. So people will then know that that is the output. We'll delete all that and we'll copy. And the idea is that you can put this down as is and build it, and it won't build, you know, if you're not making constant combinators in your factory, it'll just leave those blank, but the factory will still work because these are like undergrounds just bypassing that. And we can tidy it up a little bit by just taking those lines off there. They don't need to go any further than that, and we won't need that or those. And then we can go blueprint, add that in, and it's going to say beaconed red circuits. And that's we'll have the main item being that, and that one being a beacon, and then we'll have the third one, let's say, being a red belt. Outputs one red belt of advanced circuits. And outputs almost one red belt of advanced circuits, 1792 items per second. And we can then create a blueprint. So we'll just sort of tick that, save that, put the blueprint down there for the time being. Go into our blueprint library. I've got beaconed builds, in which case I've already got an electronic circuit build that I did previously. It says here, takes in 2 belts of iron plate and 2 belts of copper plate, outputs almost a full belt of electronic circuits. I'll just edit that to say a full blue belt. But I will put my beaconed red circuits in there next to it. Okay. Let's just edit that. Outputs almost a full blue belt. And again, we can put that down in our sandbox world over there. We can just, yeah, we'd have to set up the infinity chests to power all that. Now, this took a little bit of tweaking because I had to sort of play around quite a lot with the number of inserters inputting the items and outputting the results. So when I turn that on, this should be the only thing that's working. None of these have power because I've taken away their power sources. And that should be producing lots and lots of green circuits. Oh, I need to have some power on those to get them to empty all out. So the copper comes in there, it goes into this machine making the copper wire, which actually has sort of 5 outputs on it because it makes so much wire so quickly because of the productivity on it. So we've got 5 outputs, we've got a belt at the top here, a belt at the bottom there with both lines being used. So I've got 5 inputs here on the green circuit machine. I've got 5 stack inserters reading in. I've got 2 reading in there from the iron plate, and I've got 2 outputting the green circuits, which are going onto each side of a belt to come out here. And you can see that this belt coming out here is pretty full. There's still the occasional gap on it. So if I have a look at the max rate calculator here, swipe it over that, that says it's producing 2,688 electronic circuits per minute. Now a blue belt is 2,700, so for the sake of 12 items a minute, I'm not that fussed about it. Some other people might want to have that completely filled up and they'll tweak this layout and whatever. For me, that's good enough. Now there's a net rate here. I think we're overproducing the copper plate, but we're only like, you know, what, 0.14 machines. Too many, but you can't have 0.14 of machines, so you know that's fine. Everything there looks like it's getting produced. These machines very so often this flicks red, and you can see if I hover over there on the right hand side it says item ingredient shortage every so often. If we hover over it, I think one of these you'll see just, yeah, the copper plate just very slightly goes red every now and then. But I'm not that fussed about that. This is certainly producing plenty of, I mean that one has already produced, you know, 3,500, both of them are exactly the same. So if we have a look at the production statistics over the last minute, that is producing 2,500 a minute green circuits. So we won't need that many of these builds, hopefully not, we won't need that many to make all the advanced circuits, all the modules that we need. Now I've got a factory planner exported string. If we go factory planner, import level 3 modules, right, this is saying items per second. Yeah, if I've got one machine making level 3s, I'll need 2.5 machines making level 2s, I'll need 5 machines making level 1s. And again, these are all on an 8 beacon design, so this is all designed around the idea of it being laid out like this, with a maximum of 8 beacons for each assembler. But if I want to go for the 12 beacon design, do I want to, can I change? Now as soon as I change that from 8 to 12, all these other machines changed as well. So it kind of cascades down. If I go into the preferences, that is set to 12. It's just that this particular design was set to 8. I don't know if I can... Right, so we've got shift left click. No. Left right click edit, control right click delete, shift left upgrade down here, add beacon, control shift alt left click. Right, shift alt. Okay. Oop. Control alt left click. Let's do it all over the place, what the hell. So this tells me that with a 12 beacon layout, I will need, again, one of those, 2.5, 5 of those. Everything kind of levels up as well. But it does say that I need to produce, I basically need 7 assembling machines, 6.5 assembling machines there to make the green circuits for the speed modules, and another 6.5 making the green circuits for the productivity modules and for the red circuits and the blue circuits. So 6.5, well 13 in total, isn't it? Something like that. And then the max rate calculator, swoosh over all that, that's going to tell me, that's going to produce 17,500 green circuits per minute. Which is, you know, is what you need to produce all these modules. And it tells me then that it's going to need, you know, 12,500 copper plate and 12,500 iron plate coming in. So that's why I prefer to have all this set up by its own local ore patches going into a smelter, coming straight out into there, because even then providing all this lot by train stations isn't going to get the ores and the plates and whatever in fast enough, I don't think. So we'll have it all kind of localized. But that is the basic idea behind how to use a sandbox world and a creative world, and I will carry on using that idea and see if I can produce or design myself some module factories, and also, you know, just a little green circuit and a red circuit factory that I can put down on its own to provide the circuits for the sciences that I'm going to be producing as well. So it's not just for the modules, it's also for all the other science packs and just keeping the factory running. They all need their own circuits. Turn that back on because I do like to see that producing so many green circuits all in one go. And I'll leave it there and I will say, see you next time.